All right, back at it now as we plow through all these different decisions coming down from the Supreme Court. I want to get somebody to weigh in on this that could give you some gravitas. Not to mention perfectly coiffed hair and a stunning appearance. It's Steve Doolin, everybody. Here he is, best-looking, smartest, most capable attorney in the history of the world. Doolin?
Hey, Gruber. I'll try to live up to that.
Well, why not? So I feel like the Supreme Court is a bit schizophrenic at the moment. And I say that, Doolin, because one day here's a ruling that I'm like, well, that's terrible. The next day I'm like, well, that's perfect. And then it's terrible. It's like watching a tennis match, back and forth. Here's a good one. Here's a bad one. Here's a good one. Here's a bad. Are you feeling the same way? Because I see things that make complete sense, and I see things that make no sense at all. And I'm just a layman. I'm not an expert on the law like you, sir. So shed some light.
Well, I have to admit, I'm feeling a little bit that way too. I don't know that I'd use that strong a term, schizophrenic, but I was disappointed when recently my case was not taken up on my petition for cert. A case we've been working on for 10 years. It looked like a perfect case to help clarify Heller and Bruin in the Second Amendment in front of the Supreme Court. And, they don't give you an explanation. You just don't get taken up. And that's happened to a couple other cases recently that I thought were looking perfect for this same kind of clarification. Antonyuk in New York and a couple others. And then, as you say, some of them come down and they're perfect. So it's a lot like trying to figure out what a legislature is going to do. You might think you have the votes counted, but it doesn't come out quite the way you expected. It's hard to handicap this stuff. My crystal ball is broken at the moment.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. All right, fair enough. But it does seem to go back and forth. One day I think that Amy Coney Barrett's the worst thing that's happened to the Supreme Court since Sandra Day O'Connor, and then she come and is part of an order or a decision that I'm like, okay, she's back on the right side of this thing. Anyhow, a firearm silencer is part of the big beautiful bill. Cleared the House on Thursday, as you know. Buried deep in this, a provision that would scrap a $200 federal excise tax on. I shouldn't call it, they call them silencers. This is the New York Post. It should be called a suppressor, which, by the way, are the law in a lot of European countries, so they keep the sound down. This is kind of a nice win buried in there for the Second Amendment crowd, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it actually is, though some folks are unhappy, of course. There's always somebody who's unhappy. And, I'll say this with regard to suppressor versus silencer. I'm an old infantry sergeant, and the tactical guys call them suppressors, but we lawyers are stuck calling them silencers because that is the word that is used in the statutes. In fact, our Michigan statute says silencer or muffler, kind of highlighting the fact that it's the same technology that's on your car. And so that is the term when you're talking about the law. It's a silencer, and that kind of highlights the history of this thing. The National Firearms Act of 1934 was built on propaganda built up by J. Edgar Hoover and the folks running Hollywood at the time. The idea was that there are these super dangerous devices that can allow nefarious criminals to get away with crimes undetected. And, the reason we actually call them suppressors is because they kind of reduce the sound signature of a firearm, but they don't eliminate the sound signature of a firearm. It's still a good idea to wear earplugs or muffs or both, even if you're using a silencer. And you nailed it. In a lot of European countries, they're actually required. It's considered ungentlemanly and rude to discharge a firearm without a silencer or a muffler or a suppressor. All the same thing, we just use different terms. These things were designed as a safety device by the son of Hiram Maxim, the guy who invented the machine gun. And he and his son worked on creating silencers for machine guns after so many troops came back from World War I with hearing loss. Those that survived the trench warfare, for the most part, were at least partially deaf when they got home because of the machine gun.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm still partially deaf from being around.
I know I am. You should see the NRA board meetings. Everybody says, "What? Huh? Can you repeat that?"
Yeah, well, I'll share this story. My father had a 25-06 hunting rifle that he bought at one point. It had a ported barrel, which is the opposite of a suppressor, basically.
A Loudener.
I touched that thing off one time. It was like dropping an anvil on my head.
Well,
So
and actually,
I had
yeah,
tears.
this is kind of a big deal for hearing safety for hunters, because most of us, when we're hunting, don't wear hearing protection because we're trying to listen to the sounds and hear the game and whatever else is going on around us. And even it depends on the gun, right? Some are louder than others, but even one or two shots can create some permanent, lasting damage, and that stuff is cumulative through your life. So even if you don't go to the range every Saturday, if you, through a lifetime of hunting, you will do some damage to your hearing. It's truly a safety device, and the fact that that devious sociopath J. Edgar Hoover and the folks who were his puppets in Congress at the time based this legislation on Hollywood propaganda, which is exactly what it was. They had a tight relationship between the FBI and the film industry, which, just like now, was controlled by a few moguls. So all they had to do was have the right relationship with 4 or 5 folks out in Hollywood, and they could get the public to believe all kinds of crazy things, that machine guns never miss, and they never run out of ammunition, and silencers.
That's right. As long as you got checks in your checkbook, you can't run out of money. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So the law was. Oh, we're done. Okay.
Thanks for the logic and the wisdom, my friend. Yeah.
Always
You're
a pleasure.
never done. You're just on pause.
I'll be on pause for a week.
All right. Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks, Gruber.
We'll take a break. I've got, what do I got? Don in Oklahoma? Is that who I've got next? On the Common Sense Hotline.